What's up, family? I know you took the time to watch that Making Your One Count with Shonda Nunez. I know that you looked at the singles and money version of Pandemic Proof, and now we got another one for you. Listen, over the last 18 months, how many times did you talk about real estate? How many times did you talk about buying a house? How many times did you talk about your value went up and should you sell your house? How many times did you talk about whether you should keep renting or if it's time to make that jump? How many times did you talk about multifamilies? I know you've talked about it, and we got another one for you. Dr. Rudolph Peters talks about opening doors with real estate. Go check it out. It's going to bless you. And then I want to encourage you to do something. Share it with somebody else. We got other ones coming your way, but check this one out. Let me know what you think. Put something in the chat. We'll talk to you soon.
Okay, so let me introduce myself. My name is Rudolph Peters, and I presently pastor in Stockton, California. I have the honor of pastoring some amazing people out here in California, and having a really great time doing that. Prior to that, I pastored in Northeastern Conference. So I spent many years in New York and Connecticut. And so really enjoying the best of both sides of the country and really having fun doing that. Now, let me say at the onset that I am not a professional real estate guy. I don't have credentials. What I'll be sharing with you today are things that I've learned along the way that have benefited me in my journey, and what I've researched, and so on and so on. And so I hope that as we spend time together, that we will learn together and probably hear something that will be beneficial to you. All right, so my topic today is opening doors with real estate. Opening doors with real estate. I love real estate. I think it's really a neat field, really cool area. I love to see things built. I like to build things. And so even though I'm not doing the work, I would love to do some of the work, but I just love the concept of creating spaces for people to live and for people to raise their families. Let me begin by talking briefly about the state of wealth in America. The state of wealth in America. If you have been following the news or you are aware, there's a serious disparity in terms of wealth in America between people of color and whites. For example, according to the Brookings Institute, the net worth of a typical white family is $171,000. The net worth of a typical white family is about $171,000. The net worth of a typical Black family is $17,150. So there's a significant disparity between the wealth that is housed among whites vis-a-vis people of color. Not only that, according to the Boston Globe, they did a study a few years ago, and according to the Boston Globe, in the Boston area, the typical African American has a net worth of $8. The average African American has a net worth of $8 compared to $247,000 for the average white person. So there is this disparity, and what I've discovered based on my reading and research is that home ownership, real estate, has been the greatest vehicle for wealth creation in America. And the challenge is, over the years, people of color have been locked out of that opportunity. And so, we have government policies, we have slavery, racism, we have redlining, we have all those kinds of things that prevented people of color from really entering the home ownership arena. And so we find ourselves even today where the average person of color is hesitant to buy a house because they're like, I don't want the responsibility. I don't want to be bothered. I'd rather rent, let somebody else do the work. And I'm saying that if we keep on renting, we are denying ourselves one of the greatest opportunities for wealth creation. And so a part of my thing is, how do we begin to open up those doors using real estate? Because real estate is a tried and the true vehicle for wealth creation. I mean, and look, sometimes the market goes up and the market goes down, but in the long run, if you own a home, you will be better off than renting every time. And so we want to address this subject today. And how do we begin to open those doors? Well, how do we begin to open doors with real estate? Well, the first thing that we and I need to do if we want to begin to open those doors is to educate ourselves. It begins with self-education, because there are a lot of things we don't know about real estate. When a person decides to look, hey, I don't want to buy a house because I don't want to be bothered with fixing stuff. I don't know what will happen. The fact is, you're going to rent. You have to live someplace. So you're going to own the place you live, or you're going to rent it. And if you're renting it, you're paying the mortgage for someone else. So after 30 years of renting, you have nothing to show. Whereas if you bought a house, after 30 years of paying for it, you own the house, and you could pass it on as a legacy to your family. And that's one of the problems with us. Sometimes we don't have anything to pass on to the next generation. Matter of fact, we get to the end of our lives, and we are dependent on the young to take care of us in our advanced years. And so we are depleting them, and we are setting them further back, because instead of them having to save for themselves and take care of themselves, they have to take care of us. And so that's a disservice that we do. And so the first step is education. And it begins with understanding that education. Well, the Bible says in Hosea chapter 4, verse 6, my people are destroyed for lack of knowledge. My people are destroyed for lack of knowledge. And what you don't know will cost you a lot of money. And so we have to get about getting the information. One of the places I will recommend for anyone who is interested in understanding the real estate market is this place called Bigger Pocket. Bigger Pocket is a community of investors throughout America. People just like you and me, average people who are coming together in this space where they're learning from each other, they're getting information, and they're going and doing amazing things, buying houses and investing in real estate and making a lot of money. So that's a place that I will recommend. You could get a free membership, but at a certain level, you could get a paid membership as well that will let you into more stuff. So that's the first one, education. Education, is it better to rent or is it better to buy? And sometimes you can make the case that it's better to rent. For example, if you know that you're going to be in a city for 6 months or a year, I would say don't go buy a house if you're going to be there just for 6 months or a year. But I'm saying if you're going to be there for more than 2-3 years and you can afford to buy, you're better off buying than renting. And again, it depends. It depends on where you are. It's real estate is location. So in a place like California, you could buy a house today and next month you have 50,000 equity when the market is right. So it all depends on where you are. But long term, I will say maybe over 5. If you're going to be at one place for more than 5 years, it's better to buy than to rent. Because typically what I discover is that sometimes rent, the price of rent is, if not the same as what you'll pay for a mortgage, sometimes it's more. You will pay more in rent than you pay in a mortgage. Now, yeah, owning the house comes with some responsibility. You know, the buck stops with you. And if something goes wrong, you have to fix it. And that's why, you know, you would put some money aside. You'll have to put money aside every month to say, look, hey, if anything happens, I'm going to put a little bit of money aside every month so that if something happens, there will be some money to fix it. Because that's what your landlord does. I mean, every time you pay your rent, he takes some of that money and he puts it aside to say, well, when something goes wrong and the tenant calls, I have the money to fix it. So you could do that yourself. So the first thing is education. The other thing too is that sometimes you may not be able to buy a house, and this would be, I mean, where you live in your state, because you might be in a state where it's so expensive. For example, California, the average house right now in California is about $400,000, $500,000. And you may not have what it takes. And you may say, well, you know what? Ohio, houses are going in Ohio for $60,000. So you know, I'm going to buy me a little house in Ohio and I'm going to rent it out. I'm going to put somebody in it. So what is happening if you do that? You own a house in Ohio, you have somebody who's paying your mortgage and possibly putting some money in your pocket. And we'll get more at that in a little bit. So the first step in opening up doors with real estate is beginning to educate yourself. The second thing is to begin to save. You can't afford to spend everything you make. You have to put away something. And if you want to get in real estate is expensive. And the minimum, I think, down payment is about 3%. And so at least you have to try and save at least 3% of whatever the cost of the home is, and a little bit for closing. So you have to get on a budget. You have to begin to make sure that you are spending less than you make. If you find yourself spending more than you're making, create, you know, maybe an emergency fund. So look, you know what, I want to have an emergency fund of $1,000. That's the beginning. And once you get that emergency fund of $1,000, you say, okay, I want to get it to 3,000. And, you know, you put that aside, you begin to save. So you create a budget, you do not spend more than and you get out of debt. You get out of debt. You know, I will not encourage you to get into real estate if you have credit card debt that you're paying 20% on. I mean, you know, it makes no sense. Get out of debt first. Try and eliminate those obligations. Then the third step is to work on your credit. I mean, bad credit is expensive. I mean, if you have bad credit, I mean, somebody with a credit score of 750 applies for a loan, and they will get 2% interest. You with a credit score of 500 apply for the same loan, the same amount, and you will pay 8% interest. I mean, that's how expensive it is. And that difference is a lot of money. That's possible $200 difference in terms of the cost of the money you spend. So the first thing is make sure that you understand the cost of credit. Pay your bills on time, especially those light bill and phone bills and all those little bills. Pay your bills on time. Make sure you pay your obligations on time. Build your credit. You want to get good deals in real estate. You want to have a credit score north of 700. You want to be at 720 or above to get good competitive rates. And 700 is okay. But once you start getting to 650 and 660 and below, you're going to pay a premium to get into the real estate business. Now, so if you educate yourself, you begin to save, and now you have a little bit of money. Let's say you're renting right now and you have a little money, you have a $10,000 snatch away someplace, your credit is 700. The next step for you, I will say, is to acquire your primary residence. This is how you're going to begin to win with real estate. The place where you live, make sure you own it. And I'm going to recommend, instead of buying your dream home for early, don't buy your dream home too soon. See, the problem with a lot of us, we go for that first home and all the bells and whistle, and we fall in love with the house. And that house becomes a noose around our necks because it is so expensive. We're just barely making it. My recommendation is that your first home should either be a duplex, a triplex, or a fourplex. See, the government treats up to a fourplex as a single family. They don't treat it as a commercial. That's residential. So here's if you say, look, I'm going to buy a duplex. Now, if you buy a duplex and let's say you bought it for $100,000 and your mortgage is $1,000 a month, everything. You live on one side and you rent the other side for $1,000. So you rent one side for $1,000 a month, you're living rent-free. From the get-go, you're living rent-free. So your first house, don't go for the dream house. Don't try to impress folks. You may not be where you want to be at that time, but you're looking at creating wealth, because your real estate has the potential of creating wealth for you. Because if typically a single family home, it is not an asset, it's really a liability, because it's costing you money every month and it's not putting money in your pocket. But a duplex, with you living on one side and someone else living on the other, is an asset, because immediately it is beginning to put money in your pocket. So my suggestion, that first house, you might be a little uncomfortable, but if you can get a duplex, if you can get a fourplex, that's perfect, because you live in one, you have 3 tenants. Right away, you're making money, because 2 of them, you live in one for free, one of them pays the bill, and 2 of them put money in your pocket. You're building money. You're building. What I suggest is, once you have that first home, you stay in it for 2 years, a minimum of 2 years. Because what that does is that if you live in your home, your primary residence, for 2 years, Uncle Sam, if you sell it, Uncle Sam doesn't charge you taxes on the profit. You don't have to pay taxes on the profit. So for example, if you're a couple, up to $500,000. If you're single, up to $250,000. So for example, you bought a house and it appreciated in value. You bought it for $100,000, and 3 years later, you sold it for $300,000. That $200,000 will be tax-free. You don't have to give Uncle Sam a dime, because if you sell that house within the first year, you will have to pay Uncle Sam about 35 to 40% of that $200,000. So you don't want to give away all that kind of money. So you stay in that house for a minimum of 2 years. And my recommendation would be, after that, you step out and you move out of that house. You're not selling. You're moving out of that apartment. You would have saved enough from what you were getting from to buy another home. Now you're buying you're buying another primary. Now, if you want to, really go aggressive, then you buy another fourplex or another triplex. You live in one again, you rent the others out. Now you're a landlord now. And by the way, you don't have to manage these. If you don't want to manage, you don't have to manage, and I will show you how to do that later. But now you have 3, 4. Let's say the first one was a fourplex, the second one's a fourplex. Now you have 7 doors that are being rented out, and you live in one. Now you're making money. The goal is you want to replace your income. So let's say you're making $5,000 a month. You want to be at a place where you are replacing your income, and where you're putting money, you're building wealth. Not only are you getting cash flow, but your tenants are paying for your mortgage. They're paying down your house. And after 30 years, you will own all those houses outright, and you don't have an obligation to anyone. So that's a part of the conversation that you begin to operate from, where you're building that home. You may ask, how can I fund? So let's go back. How can I fund my first project if I don't have the savings? How can I fund this? So buying your first home, the government has programs where you could pay 3% down. So in a house for $100,000, all you need to have is $3,000. $3,000 would get you in the game, and you may need to have, you could borrow the closing costs, roll it into the mortgage, and so, but you will need to have the closing costs of about $3,000, 3%. So I mean that you, and how could you get that money? Well, you can get some of that money from, let's say, your 401k. You can borrow from your 401k. They will allow you to borrow from your 401k to buy your primary residence. And there are two ways to borrow from your 401k. You could borrow from it where you don't have to pay it back. In that way, Uncle Sam will assess your tax bill about 20%. You'll have to pay 20% in taxes if you don't want to pay it back. If you choose to pay it back, then you took a loan from yourself. Now you're paying back yourself every month. You're paying back yourself every month until you pay it off. The way I see the real estate market is going, for example, let me share with you an example. About 6 years ago, I took about $25,000 from my 401k to buy a house, my primary home. That was, and I put 3% down. Houses in out here expensive, so my house was $335,000. I sold that house a few months ago, and that house, I was able to walk away with over $250,000 in equity. So from that $25,000 that I took from my 401k, that made me $250,000 in a matter of 5 years. So sometimes people say, I don't want to take. There's no, my 401k did not increase that kind of money in that 5 years. So sometimes you have to, you have to think outside the box. You have the money sitting there. It's your money. You can use it to do that. Another way you could get that money is, you have friends, family members say, look, hey, I need to borrow $5,000 from everybody. So look, I'll pay you back later to get that money to pay for that first house. You can take, if you already own your primary, you could take some equity out. Let me tell you something about equity. Equity is not money until you have it in your hand. Now, I've come across a lot of people that, oh man, I got 200,000 equity in my house. You have it today, but if the market goes down, then you might be upside down next year. So I tell people, if now the market is good, the interest rate is significantly low, take 20, 30, 40,000 from your primary and buy an investment property. Don't take it out and go buy clothes and buy furniture. No, that's not good use of your money. Some people take it out to go on vacation. No, don't take equity out of your house to go on vacation. Don't take it out to go to buy furniture. If you take equity from your house, buy an investment property. Invest a second home or an investment property 20% down. It will pay dividend in the long run. So you want to do that. You want to do it. By the way, any questions so far? Any question? I'm talking like crazy. Any question? Any question so far? No? Am I coming through clear? Good. All right. So
yeah.
There's a question.
Yeah. Where is there a particular location that you would go to look for a house? Say, like you said, you took out $25,000 and then you bought a house. Was that your intention to buy the house and then flip it?
Right. So my intention then was not to flip. That money I took from my 401k was to buy my primary home, and that's out here in California. So about 3 years into that, I refinanced and took some money out, and I bought a triplex in Connecticut. So because I realized I couldn't afford to buy a house in Connecticut because the prices were so high, but Connecticut, the rental market is good and the prices are pretty okay. They're not crazy high. So I was able to buy a triplex in Connecticut that I held on to. And I mean, one tenant was pretty much paying. So in that house in Connecticut, it's 3 doors. My total obligation, mortgage, taxes, insurance, is $1,350 a month. My lowest tenant pays $1,300 a month. So I'm making $3,600 every month in terms of rental income. One unit pays for the whole thing, and all the rest is just money in my pocket. It's gravy. I mean, it's far away in Connecticut, so I have to have I have property manager doing all that stuff. And that comes at a cost. And I will talk about that in a little bit.
And all of that, you had planned it out.
Yes, you got to plan it out. And you have to build a team. So I had to build a team in Connecticut, a realtor, getting the right real estate agent, finding a handyman that I could call when I need, a property manager who will find tenants to get in, all that kind of stuff. So you have to plan it out. You know, it takes some intentionality to execute this plan. Now, real estate is not get rich quick. You're not going to get rich overnight, but there is a path to make wealth, to create wealth in real estate. And understand the market goes up and the market goes down. You have to know why. You have to know your why, because if you don't know your what, because people will always need a place to live. People will always need a place to live. And if you're providing good housing to people where you're good landlord, you're taking care of your apartments, you will always have tenants. Sometimes, you may run into one who refuses to pay and you may have to evict. And that's why, you make provision for that. And we'll talk about that in a little bit. So that's so the key is owning your first home. I will say run from renting like crazy. If you're going to be at one place for more than 5 years, buy the house. And even when you move, you don't need to sell that house. Rent it out. Let it stay there. Fix it up nicely, put a tenant in there. Make sure you get a good tenant and let that thing pay for itself. And even if you break even, and I'll tell you, we'll talk about, even though you break even, at least it is paying for itself. You have an asset. You have an asset that 20 years down the road, you can sell it. The market is high and you bought it for 100,000 and 20 years later, you sell it for 700,000. That's money in your pocket. Somebody paid for it already for you. So that's the way to go. So again, the first step is to buy that primary. Once you're in your primary, if it accumulates equity, take some of the equity and go for the second house. Remember, I said the first home, avoid buying your dream house. Don't buy a fancy single family house. If you can buy a duplex, a triplex, or a fourplex. A fourplex is even better because you can really get this thing rolling. You can snowball wealth with a fourplex. Now, let me talk about how do you analyze. So let's say you have your primary, you have some money, and you want to buy another house. How do you analyze to find out whether a house is worth it? Because in real estate, you make the money when you buy, not when you sell, it's when you buy. And if you don't buy right, you might be in for a lot of trouble. So again, real estate is location, location, location. You want to buy in areas where people are, where their jobs, people are moving to. And sometimes, there's some areas, like for example, I'm here in California. I had a deal to buy 10 houses in Syracuse, New York. And I was about to sign on the dotted line because the houses were 40-something thousand per house. They're two two-family houses. Some of them were duplex, triplex. I was about to sign and I said, look, you know what? This is a big investment. Let me fly up to Syracuse and see where these houses are. And my friend, it was one of the best decisions I made, because when I start walking in those areas where the houses were, I mean, I was afraid to be there in the daytime. So I'm like, if I'm afraid to be there in the daytime, why would I think people would want to rent from me to be in that area? And so I had to walk away. So you have to know where. You got to know where. So let's say, how do you analyze a house to find out whether or not it's a good deal? Because my rule of thumb is every door, and when I say a door, if you have a two-story building, every unit, I like to have at least net a cash flow of about $100 to $200 per unit, per door. So if you own a triplex, that means you have 3 doors. Every apartment is a door. I like to make at least 100 to 200 cash flow from every unit. So how do you analyze a property to find out whether or not it's worth it? So the first thing you could go to Google, to Zillow and see, you found your area, say, okay, hey, I want to buy a house in Dallas. Let's say it's called Dallas. I want to buy a house in Dallas. So you go on Zillow, you put in the area, and a whole lot of houses popped up. And this one popped up before you. It's a duplex. We're gonna do a duplex in Dallas. And you look at the duplex, and the asking price is $100,000. Now you have to make it, okay, is it worth buying this house or not? That's the question you have to answer. How do you make that decision in 10 minutes? You have to be able to make that decision in 10 minutes and say, well, is it worth my time or not? Okay. So the first thing you do, you find out, okay, this is what it's cost. It's $100,000. And you want to ask yourself the other question. It's a duplex, because you want to make money. You're going to rent it out. If I rent this house out, if I fix it up, how much is it going to cost me to fix it up, to get it in shape that I could rent it out? Let's say you determine it's going to be $10,000 to fix it up and get it ready. So now you're at $110,000. Closing costs may be about $5,000. Now you're at $115,000 in total costs in acquiring this house. Now you're going to go to the bank and you're going to get, so I'm going to walk you through this. We're going to go, there's a calculator I use, which is Carl's mortgage calculator, Carl's, KALS, mortgage calculator. And what we want to find out first is, we're going to look at, if we buy this house at $100,000, we have to put 20% down because it's an investment property. We're going to put 20% down. So we need to come up with another 20,000. Let's say we get interest rate at 3% interest rate and 30 years. That means our monthly payment on this thing will be $337, let's say $338 a month. That would be your mortgage payment, $338 a month. Now, with that, you will have other expenses. So you want to say, okay, what's going to cost me to operate this house? So you have the mortgage, which will be $338. Now you have costs associated, insurance. You have to pay insurance. And so let's say we pay $75 a month for insurance. You have to insure the house. The bank will want you to insure the house. $75 a month. Your taxes, let's say your taxes is $200 a month. All right. Now, if you're out of state, let's say you're not there, and you say, look, I don't want to be bothered. So you have a property manager. Well, before we get there, how much can we rent this out for? Let's say we can rent each apartment for $800 a month. So apartment number 1 is rented for $800. Apartment number 2 is rented for $800. That means I'm having a rental income of $1,600 a month. Okay, that's important. That's an important number, because that will determine whether or not it's a good deal or not. So now let's deal with the expenses. Typically, I will make provision for a property manager to manage the property. Typically, they will charge you 10% of the rent to manage the property. So $160 a month. A property manager will charge you that to find the tenant, pick up, collect all your rent, send the money to you, tell you when there's something wrong, answer all the calls from your tenants, make sure all the work is done. Now, any work that needs to be done is addition. They will tell you. So let's say a tenant calls you and say, my toilet is broken and it costs the property manager $100 to fix it. They're gonna bill you an extra $100 because that's extra work, okay? Now you wanna make provision for vacancy. You're gonna say that, you know what? Somebody may not pay the rent for, I might be in transition, somebody may leave and I'm not getting rent for 2 months. So I need to make provisions. So I normally put 10% of the rent aside every month for vacancy. So another $160 you put aside. Now remember, this is your money. The $160 that you put aside for vacancy, you're putting aside in case somebody doesn't pay. But if they pay their money, that's your money. But you're putting aside every month. Okay, you want to put it aside. The next thing you want to do, also 10% of the rent, you want to put it aside for repair. This will be for day-to-day wear and tear. A tenant calls you, my toilet is broken, it's $100. That money you're putting aside every month. Then you want to put aside 10% as well for cap repair, another $160 a month for capital repair. That means when the roof goes bad in 10 years, you have the money. If the furnace goes out, you have the money. You're putting aside money every month for that. So I told you that you put aside money for cap repair. You're putting aside money for regular repairs. You're putting aside money for vacancy and for another 160 for property management. Okay, so you put all those aside. Now, once you have all those aside, if we do the numbers on that, and let me just pull that up. I didn't print that page. When you do the numbers on that, so you have all that, taxes, you have water and sewer. Water and sewage you have to pay, and depends because once you have a duplex, it's connected. So maybe let's budget $120 a month to pay water and sewer. Now, when you add all that up, your total expenses outside of your mortgage is $1,035. When you add your mortgage to that, it is $1,373. $1,373. That means you are making a positive cash flow of $227 every month. Every month from that house, so it's putting $100 and maybe $112, $13 in your pocket per door. So every month that house is giving you $227. But understand, if in that year you didn't do any cap repair, that's 160 multiplied by 12. If in that year you were fully rented, that's another $160 multiplied by 12. That's money in your pocket. So what I'm trying to show you is that you're creating the worst case scenario. And when you after you add all these numbers, you're still making $100 per unit, that's a good investment. So this house for $100,000, it's a good investment. You can't go wrong. As a matter of fact, your return on investment on this house is about 33% because your total investment is $35,000 because you're borrowing money from the bank. Your total investment is the 20 plus the 15, the 20,000 for down payment plus the 15 for repair and closing costs. So 35, you went in 35,000, But this thing every year is giving you a 33% return on your investment. There is no bank, there is no place in this world that you will get a 33% return on your investment. The stock market could do that, but it has all the risk. Stocks, you can't do that. You see, and this one, you have some control. You do have some control. This is your house. This is your real estate. And so you build from that, and that's how, and so you have one. So let's say your goal is to say, look, you know what? I want to quit my job. I want to be able to quit my job and just replace my income with real estate. At this rate, if you have 10 of these, you are 2,000, but you don't need 10 because remember, I have so much stuff in that thing with your money in it that you could simply say, okay, I could do 5% for cap repair. I could do 5% for vacancy. I could do 5% for repairs. That means you have just add 80 multiplied by 3 to your monthly cash flow. So you decide that. You could decide that. Okay. Any question here? Any question there? Because that's a lot of heavy stuff. Any question?
Yes. Well, what question on that? So you saying that 200 out of the 1,600 that you make,
Mm-hmm.
you 1,300 is covering everything, and you saying if I can make $227, that would be a good invest. $227 per month.
Yeah, that's a good investment. And here's
That
what, let me tell you why again. Because remember, in those numbers I gave you, I have 10% for vacancy. I have 10% for cap repair. I have 10% for repair. That means 160, 160, 160. That's 0, 3, 6, 18, 1, 2, 3, 4. That's another $480 that you could put in your pocket anytime if you want to. But my thing is, I don't want you to find yourself in a position when an expense arises, you have to go search for money. The money's already there sitting there, but that's your money. You follow me?
Yeah, I got you. Hey,
So
one more question.
Mm-hmm. Go ahead.
The when you take the insurance out, wouldn't that cover a lot of those expenses, like toilets and stuff that go out?
No, your insurance doesn't cover those things. Your insurance will cover acts of nature. Let's say the house get blown down or there's a fire.
Oh, okay.
That's where your insurance come in. All those little incidental, like toilet breakage and replacing a window, that's gonna come from you. That's why you put that 20% aside every month. One for the repair, 10%. And if nothing happens in the year, you take that money out and say, oh, I'm gonna put that money towards investing in another house. You see?
Okay.
And I mean, for ideally, if you could be at 200 per door, that's really great. Again, it's where you are and what the market will bear. Any other question?
No.
I have a question. I have a question about inherited land that might not have any properties or like residence, structures on them. What do you suggest?
So if you have inherited land, it depends on where it is. I mean, if it's prime, you could subdivide and sell. If there's a need for if people are looking for land, you could subdivide and sell. Or if you get the right connections, you could build a subdivision. Depends on where it is. And all you will need, the first step will be to divide the land and get an architect to to design the project. And what you do, you begin to sell the paper. So you approach some people and say, hey, I'm about to build these houses. Would you like to buy one? And they say, yeah, well, put 20% down. And you could use that. So, I mean, and that will, you will have to hook up with others. The other way it would be to rent it out if you can't use it right now, or, if you can't bill on it, then maybe, sell it, and so that you could invest in something else. I mean, it depends on what, because land sitting there, I mean, you're not making any money on it. If you have a house on it, somebody's renting the house, then you can make some money on it. So it all depends. Depends on where you are and what your goals are.
I'm originally from St. Croix, Virgin Islands, and
St. Croix. Oh my goodness, I have a whole lot of people in St. Croix, a whole lot of friends in St. Croix.
Yeah, and so some of the kids over the years, decades, have inherited land, but we just recently found out that some of our siblings did not. Family members did not pay the taxes on the properties. And so that's a big thing now that we're having to help them address. Some of us are helping them figure this out. So just want to talk about inheritances and not losing it because people aren't paying the taxes. But there's also some land. And so I'm always like, okay, how do we use the land? So thank you.
Yeah. And remember with taxes, you can lose your stuff just for the taxes you owe, because the government will sell it. So you have to be careful, get on that quickly, make sure that, because they will sell it just for the taxes. And understand, folks, that look, there's money to be made in real estate. There no ifs, ands, or buts. There is money to be made in real estate. Is it risk-free? No, it's not risk-free. But worst case scenario, you live in your real estate. It's a house you live in. You need a place to live. And if you are renting, I will suggest that as soon as you can, you go ahead and, okay, so the question here is, as long as you make 200 plus profit, $200, it is good enough. So if you put all those expenses that I showed you in the equation, and you're walking away with $100 per door, it's a good investment. So remember, if a duplex will be 2 doors, so that property that we analyzed a while ago, you're making 200, that's a good investment. Rules of thumb, you want at least $100 per door. Doing what I told you. If you start cutting corners and you don't do all those numbers I gave you, and let's say you didn't do cap repair, you didn't do vacancy, you didn't do repair, and you come out at that 200, that's not a good investment. That's not a good investment. All right, so make sure you put all those numbers. You want to make provision for taxes, insurance, sewer and water. You want to cap repair, property management, repair, and vacancy. Once you put all those in and you come up with $100, you're golden. You're golden. And don't be afraid of venturing out into different states. You will need to build a team, of course, reach out. I did Connecticut because I used to live in Connecticut. I'm familiar with the area. But right now I'm looking into Milwaukee. I'm looking into investing in Milwaukee. I've been to Milwaukee, but I don't know night from there, but I know there's some good deals in Milwaukee. I'm looking at Atlanta as well. I'm looking to invest in Atlanta as well. So it doesn't matter where you are. I mean, I'm from the Caribbean, St. Vincent. I'm looking to do some stuff in St. Vincent. And if I get some land in St. Croix, I'm going to do something in St. Croix too. It's about anyway.
Question.
Right. Yes.
If you had an opportunity to buy some property in Haiti right now, would you take a look at it, or?
I'm not sure if I'm going to do Haiti. I'm not sure if I will. Not sure, not sure. But if someone in the U.S. who is from Haiti has an opportunity and knows the country and the territory, I think there's always an opportunity, because there's so much things you can do. I mean, a few years ago, I mean, I bought some land in St. Vincent because I said, look, hey, I mean, they're not making more land, and eventually I would want to own something. And so, I mean, I've been sitting on that land for many, many years, but it has tripled in value. If I want to sell it, I could make 3 times. But that's my land. I want to build my, I want to build my spot on when I, so that when I go home, I have a place to go. So it depends. If you're from there, and I did St. Croix in jest. I probably won't buy in St. Croix, but any state in the U.S., I will buy in any state in the U.S. I mean, just about any state, I will. Yeah.
Okay. The reason I asked, I have a friend who has property in Haiti. She wants to sell this. She wants to sell my wife and I, but she has problems with the guy over there who is supposed to be keeping the property up.
Do you have Haitian? Do you have Haitian roots at all?
My wife is from Haiti.
Okay. Well, that's always something to look at. I mean, and she will know the place. And if ever you say, look, we want to retire in Haiti, might be great to own something there. But it all depends. I will say, don't be afraid to go. If you have connections, don't be afraid. If the price is right and it will suit your need, then it's an opportunity. Again, real estate, the opportunity comes when you buy. So make sure that you're not overpaying. Make sure you're getting the right price and the right location.
Okay.
So remember, what we're looking at here is we just looked at the first step is to get that primary home. Use that primary home now to get the others. Ideally, when you buy that first house, buy a duplex, a triplex, or a fourplex. All right. If you're in an area where, okay, those are not available and you have to buy a single family, make sure, don't buy the best house in the best neighborhood. Look for the worst house in the best neighborhood. Look for the worst house in the best neighborhood and fix it up. You could, I mean, and there are other strategies, you could flip. I mean, I didn't talk about flip because, I mean, flip is risky stuff, because you never know, people flip houses. So I'm only talking right now about just buying rental, having them available to rent them out and make money from them. All right. Any other question? I think we're supposed to finish at 1:15. Any other question? Is there anything that I need to clarify? Opening doors with real estate. If you can avoid renting, please, by all means. And I know sometimes we're afraid to buy because, hey, if it's broken, I have to fix it. Okay, it's okay. A lot of stuff you'll be able to do yourself. And if you can't, pay somebody to do it. Get a good handyman to come in. Don't buy your dream house too early. Don't go out there and buy that house. Don't fall in love with it because, again, sometimes, you fall in love with the house and the market is up. Let's say right now, a house in California that you bought 5 years ago, let's say you bought it for $300, you could sell it right now for $550. And some people, they're so in love with the house that they won't sell it. And I'll say, look, sell that house, put your money aside. And if in this case, if you have to rent for a year, go rent for a year and let the market correct itself. And when the market corrects itself, you go back and buy again. That's
hey, One more question.
Go ahead.
The city may appraise a house for $40,000, and everybody in the neighborhood saying the house value is 120,000. What's the best way to find out the true value for your?
So the best way is to get a realtor to do the comparables, because it doesn't matter what the city says, and typically the city will be lower than what is. It's what has sold in the last few months. So let's say you're looking at a house and you want to assess the value. You look at all the houses sold within the last 4 or 5 months, and if you think, let's say you say, I think this house is worth 100,000, but if every house that's sold in that area within the last 3 months sold for 50,000, then you're not going to get 100,000 for it. If you think it's worth 100,000, but the last 6 houses in your area sold for 200,000, you will get 200,000 for that house. So the best way is the comps, and then you have to take into consideration the state of the house. You know, what kind of repairs it need, how much you have to put in it. If it's really run down and bad, houses are sold for, that's what you expect to pay. I mean, that's what the worth will be. So forget about what the government says. Typically, their law is what is going on in the market. And sometimes somebody may come to you and they just love your house and they're willing to pay. For example, right now in California, there are people paying up to $100,000 above the appraised value because they want the house that badly. They're coming from San Francisco. So in San Francisco, the average cost of a house is $1 million. They're coming to Stockton, and when I say in San Francisco, they're going to get a house for $1 million is 3 bedrooms, 2 bathrooms. They come into Stockton where they get it and maybe 1,200 square feet. They come into Stockton where a house is for 5 bedrooms, 3 bathrooms, 3,000 square feet for 500,000. They say, "Oh, I'll pay you 600, 700,000 for it," because they have the money.